I just cooked some corn and made a salad. And James is mostly going to talk about Barenaked Ladies Talk to the Hand, live in Michigan. Roxy music. I'm going to talk about Don't Worry Darling and the Rockford Files Season 6 a little bit. And James is going to maybe talk about that book again. We'll see.
Yeah, if there's time.
So,
that's okay. Book's not going away.
I overwatered my lettuce.
Okay.
Got the plastic wet up here. But anyway, Barenaked Ladies. So I put this on the top of the stack. I don't know how you felt about it, but I mean, I prefer the music of Roxy music. But I thought you laughed a lot while watching this, and it was entertaining.
I
mean, I'm not a fan of the Barenaked Ladies, but it was kind of nice to listen to while I was driving and James was watching the video.
Yeah, they got some good harmonies going. They had 5 guys singing harmony. From what I could tell, it was usually at most 2-part harmony. But
my favorite on here is not listed because it was the just improvised song that they made up for the man with the maracas. It
was so smooth.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure whether they improvised it, but yeah, I thought maybe the guy with the maracas was a planned audience. On hearing it again, and yeah, I heard the first part of it again.
I played it over again because I was driving and I'm not used to, like, usually while James we used to have a car that didn't have a DVD player in it, and so when James was driving, then I would do the switching the CDs around and stuff for him. Well, now this time I'm driving and he's in the back watching videos, so when something goes off, either I play, just push it again to do the thing, or I have to try to get another disc in while I'm driving, and I don't think that's very safe. And so I ended up, eventually I was sick of hearing this go through the second time, and I was like, okay, I got to take it off. So I fumbled around and just grabbed the CD case that was there and opened it up, and I managed to get that out okay, and I'm not looking at what I'm doing, I'm just feeling, and I got the CD out and I put it in the machine and it's not playing, and I'm like, oh, I might have put it in upside down. And it turns out, yeah, that's what I did. Yeah. But anyway.
Better than going off the road.
Yes, I might get used to that, having to do that without looking, and I don't like it. I don't like that. So anyway, so there's we were watching, or well, James was watching, I was driving, I was listening to disc 2 of this. We already talked about disc 1, and my favorite were the last 2 songs on disc 2, because I liked My Only Love, that one's good, and I liked More Than This a lot, right? So I don't know, I didn't see it, so I don't know. James says the last one was a video, and he liked it. Oh, and he liked the way ABBA, the women from ABBA, introduced them. He thought that was great.
And a friend in Agneta, or Agneta. I'm not sure how they say the TH in Swedish. And Icelandic, I'm pretty sure they'd say that like a TH. But the DH is a better way of spelling it, but okay. Anyway, yeah, I missed the first part when I was getting in the car. Pauline was reading back on this one as well.
Yeah,
Then I saw ABBA. That was a bit of a surprise. Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. I kind of like ABBA. Kind of don't care for them that much. I definitely don't hate them. Anyway, yeah, I liked More Than This back in the day, and it's got pretty catchy too. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe the best tune they ever came up with. I think all this stuff was pretty well written by Brian Ferry. Brian. Whoever it is. David Ferry. That's one of the guys involved with whacking JFK.
But I enjoyed very much this too. I enjoyed this one more. I liked the music more, and I mean, I wasn't watching it anyway, so I'm just listening to it. But James likes the music of Disc 2 more, and I enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
I started getting into Roxy music back pretty late in 1979. This Disc 1 goes back, the Disc 1 goes back to 1972, so it took me a while to get around. But I bought a lot of their albums retrospectively, pretty well all of them, back when all the albums you get were LPs. Mm-hmm. I can remember Love Is the Drug, which is one of my favorite ones. It's not very, it's kind of catchy, but it doesn't have a good tune. Over You, I think that's when I started listening to it.
Yes, you like that song a lot. You've talked about the lyrics, how you think they're really witty.
Well, the Over You part, it's the way to use a chord. One of the things that bugs me reading written lyrics, even like from the Troubadours, is where there's too much chords. And the one thing you can do to make it liven stuff up is use a chorus line like Over You, but change the meaning of it, and that's what he does. You know, he's saying, I'm kind of lost with stuff like I can't remember that, but at the end is I'll be over you or something like that. So, yeah. But I generally would like their later stuff a little bit better. It's popular. The first stuff, first album or albums had Eno in it. His electronica is a little different from the later stuff. The later stuff is they were kind of setting the template for early 80s music, like the first 4 years of the 80s, and really there was a transition era. 84 was when Bruce Springsteen started hitting, and I don't have to tell you that he wasn't much into computers and disco rhythms and all this sort of stuff. He did make it big, I think, first in 84 with something that was uncharacteristic for him. It was kind of a little bit keyboard driven. And Van Halen did the same thing. I can't remember their tune for the life of me, but they started to hit it big in pop circles around the same sort of time, doing something that was keyboard driven, which is weird because they're such a guitar band. They're really a classic guitar band. I don't care for Van Halen stuff because I really don't like listening to their lyrics.
Well, when we were listening to, what I liked most about this was the comedy. It was really funny.
I'm going to say there wasn't enough comedy. Now there was enough really, but what I'm saying is they could have done more, and they should have done more given their comic tone.
Oh, you mean
they? Yeah,
they should have kept going and going. They were
every one of their
really
tunes
great.
Should have had kind of semi-improvisational things. Like on If I Had $1 Million, they never surpassed that. I don't think they ever quite even got up to If I Had $1 Million, but they should have been breaking it and then doing comedy routines and stuff like that, breaking the music.
Yeah, because they were really great with that.
Oh, they're a great comic team. You know, like Ed Robinson or Robertson or whatever his name is. His name's Robertson, classic Canadian last name. Floyd Robertson was one of our great news announcers and stuff like that. But and Stephen Page is a classic cut-up kind of comedy kind of guy. They've got a bit of an Ernie and Bert comedy routine. Only Ed Robertson's not mean. You know, he almost seems like a kid sometimes, but a kid that's like an adolescent, whereas Stephen Page seems like an infant. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're both kids, but they're somewhat different age.
Anyway, when they were talking to the crowd and they were saying you may have noticed the cameras around, and we're shooting a video. It's a pornographic video, you know, and it's just great, right? Because I mean, you don't want to ever picture those guys in a pornographic video anyway. And plus, I guess, like, with their name being Barenaked Ladies, right? James had mentioned that they had problems with, what was it, feminists or something? Or what was
Well, no, what happened was there was a conservative politician,
crazy.
I believe in Toronto, it might have been Ontario generally, who was wanting to get them censored because of their name. But he was trying to make a point. He was trying to make a point, you know, like feminists are coming down on this, that, and the other thing. There was a lot of really prudish feminism in the 80s, and there still is a lot.
Well,
And
it's tough.
he was
A
going
lot of
after those
women
folks.
forget, like, when I reached menopause, zero sex drive. All of a sudden, nothing at all. And I had had a really strong one. And I think a lot of women become like hardcore feminists like that. I don't actually consider them to be feminists, but whatever. What people can often consider to be feminists after menopause, and they just can't relate to anything sexual anymore. They don't have a sex drive, and so it's yeah, I think that's really what it is. But anyway, I found that funny, and
I just
I think it's funny putting that James watched both of these together, because Roxy Music, I mean, their covers were, talk about Barenaked Ladies.
well, the feminists did
covers.
not like Roxy Music covers.
Yeah, I can't imagine they would.
And they were exploited. And Ferry is turned out to be a really reactionary guy. A lot of people who love Roxy Music and Brian Ferry are kind of conflicted. Who would have thought he would have turned out that way? What? Look at him. He's dressed like a Southern American dictator and stuff like that. Scenes. He was oftentimes dressed in military uniforms and stuff like that. What did you expect?
Anyway.
Reminds me a little bit, I mean, that's people on the left, about the teenage boys who are so much into Queen. And then Freddie Mercury did a video where he's dressed in drag and a big black
so
mustache.
good.
It's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're going, hey, maybe Queen actually meant something when they came up with the title for their band, the name for their band. Well, what did you think? When they started out, they were doing the David Bowie thing, only more so. They kind of came along the coattails of David Bowie. What were they thinking? I don't know.
So I enjoyed Don't Worry, Darling. I read in the credits that it was directed by, what's her name? Olivia Wilde. And I thought she did a great job.
Have you seen her on the other side of the camp?
Maybe
Oh, she
produced
produced. Okay.
Let's see. Maybe directed to. I'm not. Yeah, directed by two. So I did read it right.
So she put up some cool.
Yes, and it was entertaining. There were some things that I don't know. I guess they can be excused later on in the film, because you realize later on that things aren't as they seem. This is. It opens up and you're watching a 50s movie. It looks like a 50s scene, right? And only there's some things that aren't quite right.
Well, there's the thing I noticed just peeking in was there's this blonde that's on the back cover. Her hairstyle wasn't 50s, even though the action seemed to be set in the 50s. But you're going to explain that, or are you going to
I guess
let
I
people
will.
discover that on their own?
No. So, I guess I should always give a warning that I'm going to be talking about the movie when I'm talking about the movie. So, if you want to go watch the movie now and come back to this review, that might be a good idea if you haven't seen it yet, because I found it entertaining. I bet you would too. But anyway, it's speaking of feminism, this is a sort of gets you thinking that way, right? There's it turns out, like, there's one thing a woman says. What was it? It's some saying that, oh, random. It's so random. And when she said that, I thought, oh my gosh, they have not been paying attention to how people spoke in the 50s. Like, that random thing just came up recently. And it's awful. I wish that it had never come up.
It might be in the 21st century because it's misused. Of course, use just follows, like rules follow use. You know, like people start using random in a random kind of way. That's the way it is. You know? So when people say nauseous, I was
that makes me nauseous. Yeah, people say that all the time.
They're misusing it, but
they're misusing
now
it.
that's part of the use.
Exactly. And so what do you do, right? People say that. So do you just say, no, everybody's wrong. It should be nauseated. I feel nauseated. I don't feel nauseous.
I think nauseous
because if you feel nauseous,
I feel nauseating.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it doesn't. It's people misuse it, but it's probably more common that people say I feel nauseous than I feel nauseated.
Oh, absolutely.
So what do you do, right?
It has the advantage.
You may as well mark it in the dictionary that that's what it is now, because if you have most of society deciding that's what it is, that's what it is.
The same sort of thing with people using pines generically for coniferous stuff.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about it. We were talking about the tamarack on the trail. We were talking about
that was yesterday.
Yeah, we were talking about, I guess in hikers' books, they say that tamarack used to be just a blanket word to describe the larix genus. Larch trees, right? And so there's some that are referred to as larch for a common name, some that are referred to as tamarack, but really, apparently they were interchangeable or something like that. So what do you do? I don't know.
I wouldn't trust a touristy type of book or a scramble bike because they're not specializing.
No, like I was saying to James, I thought it was always like a frog-toad thing, you know? So apparently all toads are frogs, but not all frogs are toads. And I thought that with larix, like both tamarack and larch are larix. I thought with larix, they were all larch, really, because larch sounds like larix. So you could kind of think, well, it must have been derived from, or whatever.
It's derived from.
Yeah.
So,
and so I thought, okay, well, it makes sense that all are larch, and just some are tamarack. You know what I mean?
So do you remember the term for the technical term for ash?
What, like fraxinus?
Yeah,
what do
exactly
you
right.
mean?
So you look in French, it's got screwed up. It's frêne, F-R-E-N-E. So I believe it has a circumflex over the E. Might be an accent aigu, but either of those indicate an S has been dropped out. So it's fraise. Yeah. And so in Spanish, it's Fresno. Oh, there's a place in California called Fresno, but all that means is ash tree. So in the Romance languages, the Latin words have gotten generally scrunched down.
Well, and that's interesting again, because I have a book. I can't remember what it's called exactly, but it's a Waterton flower identification book. That's awesome. It gives the Latin names, the common names, and it gives the French names for the plants. So awesome. I was always taught, I was always taught that the Latin names are universal. And
they're supposed to be.
But it turns out French people have their own names for, and it, you know, it's arranged like a Latin name, but it's French, and it's different.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I never would have guessed that, but here it is in this book, and I'm like, huh, Well, look at that.
It'd be interesting to see what larch is in French. Like they don't have the ch sound, so I'd be interested. I'd be shocked if it weren't derived from lyrics. I'm pretty sure that's Latin. Although lyrics, yeah, that's what it'd be. So it would actually originally be a C, spelled it a C, and then something like an S. There might have been a U originally between there, and then or an I more likely. It got scrunched up between the C and the pronounced like a K, and an S. Similar thing as Pax. Originally I suspect it was PAC, maybe IS, and the I got dropped out, and so it became CS, and then they just we're going to spell that with an X. See what it is.
But yeah, there's one thing about this movie that I don't care for that much. It's when you get to know what's really going on in this story, and the husband, well, all the husbands are caring for their wives in a particular way, and yet the woman is laying in bed, and honestly, I mean, there would be some serious mess to be cleaned up, and you'd think there'd, like, it shows the man with a sponge and whatever, and it just doesn't make enough sense. People are actually really difficult to care for when they're adult size, when they can't care for themselves, and anyway,
just moving
whatever.
Is a problem.
So there were some problems there with that. Just doesn't work. But if they were in some sort of it would have been better if the women were kept in some sort of containment units that everything was automated or something like that. And because as it was, the men were having to care for their women in this situation, and it just doesn't, I don't think that they would. I don't think they would for long. And they certainly wouldn't be sleeping beside them or whatever. And anyway, still, it's entertaining, and whatever. The
final season, it actually says there.
Yeah. So I watched disc 1 before I watched disc 2, which really didn't work out that well because I watched part 1 of an episode on this disc after I watched part 2 on the other one. But whatever. I don't really know what to say about it. I already talked about Rockford Files season 6, and I guess I just brought it out to show you that even though I enjoyed the Rockford Files, these were better to watch. So anyway, did you want to talk about Barenaked Ladies and Roxy music some more, or?
Well, I was just going to say about the Barenaked Ladies. So I don't know why Stephen Page quit the band for a while. He didn't seem to. Apparently, he has a little trouble with bipolar or something.
That's
or manic depressive or whatever. And you should have realized the real funny part of it wasn't him, but him in conjunction with the band, and particularly with Ed Robertson or whatever his name is. They just had good chemistry on stage. I don't know about off stage, working together or whatever. The other thing is they seem to have a good vocal mix, particularly those two guys. They sing good harmonies, and that's one of the things I liked about Barenaked Ladies. And one of the bad influences of the rocky side of rock and roll. I realize now that rock and roll, when it hit in the 50s, wasn't much about doo-wop, kind of like precursor of soul music. As much about that as about rhythm and blues, kind of bluesy type of stuff. And when it comes to the actual musical sophistication, doo-wop was way better. Harmonies, melodies, chord progressions, instead of the usual blues chord progressions based on 3 chords, stuff like that. So what happened is, you listen to, like there's a radio station working out of Lethbridge, just the traditional one, actually, CJOC, I'm going to mention it. Their formula is 70s, 80s, 90s. Is that what it is? I don't know if they go into the 2000. That's all they play. But that's been a formula for a long time. Like classic rock didn't really include this, like going back to the 90s, didn't include the 60s. And the 60s, for a lot of years, sounds old-fashioned. To me, it sounds new-fashioned. The stuff that came the 70s, too much, like country and western just kind of appropriated that stuff. But, country and western never really been able to do the Beatles over again. They can do Bruce Springsteen all they want, Garth Brooks has got a Bruce Springsteen cowboy hat. It's that's the thing I like about the Barenaked Ladies. The guitars are kind of down. Like they've got a guy actually playing stand-up bass. I presume it's mic'd and all that sort of stuff. He looks hilarious. He looks like a guy I used to work with, except film and stuff like that. Hilarious. Anyway, it's I just wish that they'd done more comic routines and all of the stuff that they were doing. They did a little bit of You Can Be My Yoko Ono. I didn't do enough of it in Lying in Bed like Brian Wilson did. It's kind of maybe a bit of a cool song. Brian Wilson was he's diagnosed by some idiot doctor who was exploiting him. And I think the diagnosis was schizophrenia. I don't see where Brian Wilson was schizophrenic at all. I think eventually they must have decided on bipolar, manic depressive. And that's, he seems classic. Just trying to do stuff broke down. Bruce Springsteen.
Well, maybe if there was somebody in the band who was bipolar, maybe he was able to relate to that.
Someone in that band, Stephen Page or something like that.
Maybe that's why.
Maybe. Anyway, I don't know. It seems a little bit cruel. I don't know, like coming from a group that we think of as comic, but maybe it was hard. I don't know if Stephen Page was diagnosed then, and I don't know if it's a proper diagnosis. But anyway, one thing I wish is that's one thing I wish about the group. But the particular video, I wish they'd had subtitles for the song lyrics. A little bit hard
so
to
people
pick the
could
song
sing
lyrics.
along.
Well, not necessarily sing along. With me, I just want to be apprehending all the funny. It took me quite a long time, actually, several listens to the classic one. If I had $1 million to pick out all the stuff that they were saying, like some of it's fairly. If I had $1 million, how does it go?
I wouldn't have to work to the store. Oh yeah, you like that one.
Oh, I know it.
I wouldn't have to walk to the store. I like that one or something.
That one too, because
you can relate to it, right?
Yeah. We're poor.
Or the
We're
first
still
one,
poor.
I'd